this is working on streaming. Button's green, doesn't mean it's gonna work.
Well, that wasn't very optimistic.
I don't know, just, it's like a hit and miss on this body. It's like I hit cancel and I hit the green button, just like council does, and last one it was 5 times faster and ended early.
Maybe it's haunted.
The time is 6 p.m., November the 12th, 2019. This is the time and date set for the Roy City Planning Commission. Notice have been duly posted and published. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everybody please stand and join Commissioner Ashby in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we start on item number 1, Commissioner Ashby is new to the commission tonight. He's been an alternate in the past. Leland Karras has moved out of Roy and no longer on the commission. And on behalf of the commissioners, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We'll talk about declarations of conflicts. Item number 1. Does anyone have a conflict to declare?
No.
There being none, we'll move on to item number 2, and that is I'll accept the motion for the approval of the October 8th, 2019 regular meeting minutes.
I will move to approve the October 8th.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There being none, the minutes are approved. Item number 3, approval of the October 22nd, 2019 work session minutes. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion to approve the October 22nd minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There being none, those minutes are also approved. Okay, item number 4 is a public hearing. It is to consider amending the Roy General Plan, Chapter 6, Residential Development, Goal 3, Future Moderate Income, affordable housing needs. This is on because Roy City has put it on, so I will allow Mr. Parkinston to proceed.
Thank you. As you mentioned, this is an amendment to the general plan. This past state legislation, Senate Bill 34 was passed requiring municipalities to adopt within their general plan 3 to 4 strategies. The state listed 23 strategies that cities could look at. The reason why I say 3 or 4, every city, I think it's class 3 or higher, is required 3 of those 23. However, they made a caveat for anybody who has a fixed rail station, they have to have a 4th, and it has to be out of 2 particular ones. So seeing that Roy has a front runner station, we follow within the cities that need 4. The last Planning Commission meeting, we looked at all 23 of those strategies that were set by the state legislation, and we looked at moving forward 10 of those, just to adopt 10 of them. Again, these are general plan items, so it's to encourage us within the next 5 or so years to look at adopting these within ordinances or policies or what have you. So within that, the council or the Planning Commission looked to adopt within those strategies items M, R, S, T, and U, and those are listed as policy objective 2. Right now, goal number 3 has an objective 1 with, I think, 5 or 6 policies. So how our general plan is laid out, it's a goal and a policy, or goal, objective, and a policy. So the goal is in chapter 6 of helping and providing more, in this case, affordable housing. It goes through a bunch of stuff, but those weren't necessarily word for word or similar to what these 23 strategies of the state were required. So staff looked at it and said, well, these really read as policies within particular goals or objectives of our general plan. So again, objective 2 would be apply for or partner with entities that applies for affordable housing programs. That could be HUD, it could be anything that looks at providing grants or what have you to provide for affordable housing. So policy A, B, C, D, and E are reflected of M, R, S, T, and U of the state statutes. Objective 3 we're looking at would be to utilize moderate income housing set aside by CRAs. The state many years ago changed what CDAs, RDAs, and stuff can have within it. They mandated that anybody that had a CRA established at a certain date, 10 to 15% of that money had to be put aside for affordable housing within that CDA. So you're always getting money, but in this case, 15% is going towards specifically affordable housing. With the city looking to establish 3 CDAs within the city, this one just fit right in and saying, okay, well, if we're gonna have them, we might as well have it in our general plan to invest those monies within that. So again, the state statute, it's item number V. In this case, it would be objective policy A. Objective 4, which is allow for higher densities and mixed use. This kind of goes again in line with the ordinance we've got coming up on the form-based code looked at that was kind of brought forward in the Focus Roy plan that was adopted in 2017 to look at a couple locations within the city to have or allow for a form-based code or mixed use to come into. So these policies again fit within what the Focus Roy suggested and what we in the city have gone and looked for. So that's F, G, H, and J. Now G and H are the 2 items that anybody with fixed rel, you have to have one of those 2. In essence, those 2 really are conducive for it, and it's items B and C under these policies. Encourage higher density and moderate income residential near major transit investment area corridors, and eliminate or reduce parking requirements for residential developments. The thought there is if you're next to a transit-oriented or a transit line, and your development is more transit-oriented, you're not gonna have as many cars. People will still have cars. We all know that we're in America, and people will wanna drive things where transportation or transit can't get you to. So we know that there's gonna be, but we can look at reducing the number of parking stalls required. And that could be, right now, it's, for multifamily, it's 2.5 stalls per unit, 2 for the unit and 1/2 for the visitors. You can look at stuff, especially mixed use. You've got residential uses, which is more nighttime, and if you have mixed use, you got daytime activities, and why can't those overlap? Why can't some of the commercial use some of the residential and vice versa? Because you're gonna be kind of time swapping. So those type of things. Again, these are just things to look forward and try to implement. So again, as I mentioned, within the last work session, we looked at these, and these were the 10 items that the Planning Commission felt comfortable with. So I'm bringing forward as recommendations to amend the general plan.
Okay,
And staff would recommend approval.
okay. Since the city is the proponent of this agenda item, Mr. Parkinson's already had his say, so I will accept a motion for opening the public meeting.
I move that we recommend approval of the proposed
No,
amendments.
no, we need to
Public
open a
hearing.
public meeting. We
Oh.
need to hear from these gentlemen out here.
Pardon
You're
me.
willing to go there, but
Jumping the gun, I'm wanting to get out of here, I guess.
Okay. Well, you can go ahead.
I recommend that we move to go to public hearing.
Is there a second?
I second.
Bring your mic down a little bit. There you go.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're now in public meeting. Anybody that wants to address the council, commission on this issue, please come up to the microphone, state your name and your address, and then tell us what's on your mind.
I'm Byron Burnett, live at 4375 South, 2675 West. I believe I border one of your areas that Objective 4 is directed at, in between 4,000 and 4,600 West, just below the station.
Yes, sir.
First of all, to me, that represents donut hole or a residential inlay district because it's bordered on three sides by single family homes. And that ordinance was put in place to protect us from exactly what you're trying to do here, because I think you can I think if you work with us, those that border that area, that you could satisfy the requirements of the state without building 3 and 4 level apartments or even mixed use, which mixed use might make sense downtown. But it was also told when I went and reviewed this with your contract people that put this together, that it was proposed for around that station.
Mhm.
And mixed use there in the middle of a residential area, it had pictures of mixed use apartments and condominiums that went 4 or 5 high. When it asks for higher density, it doesn't have to be very high density. It could be what the plan calls now high density. It could be, which it says is 8 per acre, gave townhomes as an example. I think even that violates a donut hole in the middle of residential personally. But if you work with the area and you make that specific, then maybe you could get that through and satisfy both the state and not rile up the neighbors.
That's
But
our
right
job.
now- Right now, if you live below that walking path and they put up a 3 or 4 story, I went and drove around our neighboring city, West Haven.
Yes, sir.
There's two new councilmen in West Haven because of this issue. A new councilman in South Weber because of this mixed
Mixed use issue.
issues.
Yes.
For exactly those reasons.
Understand.
And I went and looked at some of those, and they're going 4 levels in West Haven, right in the backyard of some really nice patio home subdivision. I mean, it's right there. You walk out your back door on that and 2 houses, and it's right there, 4 stories. Behind my home, it'll be the same way. I've enjoyed the view of the lake and the sunsets for 46 years. And that's one of the reasons, there's plenty of reasons.
But that's one.
It's one of the reasons I've stayed there.
Okay.
The other reason is that it'll cause problems with my privacy in my backyard where I have a pool and I have grandkids that come over and swim. And I don't like that idea of apartments looking down on my grandkids. Now, you're going to tell me, well, that's not happening yet. But as soon as you put this into place or start zoning it, R3 or whatever's 20 per acre, then you can't put 20 per acre without going 3 or 4 stories. You're going to go 3 or 4 stories. That's what we're talking about here. That's what the state's encouraging around these front runner stations. But this front runner station's in the middle of a residential area. It's not where some of these front runner stations are where mixed use makes sense. Mixed use is you zone something mixed use, you're opening it up to a blank check. And you can say, well, we have to approve and the city has to approve any new building. But I sat in 2 meetings last week, and I'm new to this, and you'll probably see my face more. I probably need to get more involved. But I heard twice in those meetings, well, that we don't even need to talk about this because it's already zoned for that. So that told me as soon as you zone it, R3 or whatever, or mixed use, or very high density, or however you want to call it in your new plan, then I've got a potential of having 4-story condominiums or apartments was the example it gave on our plan, city's plan, right behind my home. And I don't think it's a good area for it. Downtown it might be, maybe there's some good areas down there with that new building going on right into Side Hill Air Force Base and new jobs being created. Maybe there's some good ideas downtown that it's already commercial. It's not gonna interfere with established residential that have been there for years. Maybe it'd be good down there. But I don't think it's a good idea around the Front Runner Station. I don't think it's a good idea in Wilson's Orchard, those that are familiar with that part of it, just above the track, just south of the Front Runner Station. Sooner or later, Wilson's will probably sell. Sooner or later, it'll get too tempting probably. That's not a good area for anything but really single homes there. And so my feeling is you can satisfy a lot of these requirements when, like G says, encourage higher density. That could be high density. If you worked with everybody, and if it was townhomes and they're only 2 stories high, they're not towering over anybody. They can be very nice as long as we enforce, and they can be very affordable. You don't have to have an apartment to create moderate, what do you call, that's what I was gonna ask you. What do you call moderate income housing and some of the things that you're committed to? I don't even know what a beginner home goes for nowadays, the way
More than
homes
you
are.
and I
So
want to
what's a
pay.
moderate income housing? How much does that cost?
There is a standard.
Okay,
I'll answer that in just a second. First, I want to tell you, we appreciate you coming and telling us that you would like to work with us, because we certainly would like to work with the residents around these developments. I don't know if you know it, but we have 2 meetings a month. The first meeting is this meeting here, where we vote to pass things. But we also have a working meeting, which is the 4th Tuesday of the month. And we've had some people from your area already come to those meetings and express basically the concerns you are. So anytime you see the 4th meeting, or the 2nd meeting of the month, but the 4th week of the month, you're invited to come, and we want to hear from you, because we want this to work for all of us, not just do it arbitrarily. And so I certainly appreciate you coming tonight. And you understand tonight what we're doing is simply we're complying with a mandate from the legislature that the council has to make a report by December 1st of how we're going to do this, looking at it at 30,000 feet. We haven't made any decisions about 4 stories or 2 stories or 5 stories or single stories. That's what's going to be worked out in these working meetings. And so we'd appreciate you and your neighbors to come and talk to us about it.
well then my feedback would be, you've designated 3 areas of these development areas, correct?
That's been proposed in a report we had, yes.
The downtown, around the
Downtown.
Front Runner, and where we talked about last week out there, kitty corner from Weinigers, where we talked about townhomes and isn't that the other one?
No, that's not on.
That's not
What's the
one
third- What's
yet.
the third one?
I don't remember a
There's
third.
only-
Just the 2 zones, but it
There's
does
the 2
extend up to the top of 19.
This talks about 3 zones,
Mr. Parkins,
CRA rezones, which one?
CRAs.
This body doesn't deal with CRA.
we don't do that.
Well, what's that talking about? The community reinvestment area, there were 3, right?
Yeah,
What- which-
this body hasn't reviewed it.
I just want to know what they are. Because you refer to them here in your
Yeah.
plan.
Right.
So what are
I
they?
can answer that after the public hearing.
Yeah, he'll answer all the questions after we
Okay,
finish
that's
the public hearing.
I just want to make sure it's clear that, and the other thing is I wondered how this was posted as a public hearing, because I never saw anything, it's probably me. But how is it posted that there would be a public hearing talking about something as important as you act like, well, we're just putting this in the plan. This plan's been in place for 17 years probably. I mean, it's important. I think it's important that you're a little more specific.
We think it's
So
important
where-
also.
Where did you post it, that there'd be a hearing tonight?
Mr. Parkins still will answer that because he's the
After
one that does it.
After the question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else want to come up? Same routine, please state your name and your address.
I am Kevin Homer. I live at 5398 South 4000 West here in Roy. I've only been here about a year and a half, and this is my first time coming out to
Well,
visit with y'all here. at the
congratulations.
Planning Commission meeting. I look forward to being here a little bit more. I did want to express support for at least the objective number 4, at least part of it. I do support the city creating residential zones, probably this R3, that allow for a higher density housing, whether it's high apartments that go a little bit higher, 2 or 3 or 4 stories. I would also suggest that possibly we might be able to add to that zoning some tiny homes or small homes that are a smaller footprint that would allow for denser housing as well. So that part I do support.
Good.
Now, the part that I really don't
But.
is most of all the rest of it. And you'll find out why. You'll see
Okay.
why. I don't believe that it is a good idea for this commission or this city to accept county or state or federal funds
Okay.
to do things like that. We have debt that is enslaving ourselves and our children and our grandchildren. $23 trillion of debt that we would be adding to when we accept all of these funds from all of these agencies. You're gonna find me talking about that all the time. I don't think we ought to be going in debt to do these things. I do believe that we should create the zoning. Maybe one thing that we could do to help the gentleman back here is as we create new residential zones, perhaps we could have a buffer between an R3 and other residential zones that would allow for trees to be planted or walls to be put up that would protect the privacy of the other residential zones. Maybe that's something that we could do. But as far as going into debt, further debt to do this and to accomplish this, I think that we can do this in this city by promoting the liberty and property rights of the people who actually own the land and who would develop the land so that they can make decisions about how to do it, how dense it should be within the guidelines of the zoning here in the city. So that's what I would support. That's what I
Okay.
would not
A
support.
couple of quick comments. Certainly appreciate you being here. This board appreciates comments from the citizens. We don't know everything. We don't know all the problems that are here. And we've had lots of good feedback from people coming to our meetings and telling us things to think about that we hadn't thought about before. And we really do want to work, literally, I know everybody runs for office, but we get appointed. We're not running for office, okay? But everybody that runs for office says, yeah, we want to hear from you. Truly, we do want to hear from you. So I'm going to advise you the same advice I gave to the other gentleman, and that is this second meeting of the month is where the work gets done. It's where we will discuss these things. It is much more social. We usually have them in the basement in a conference room, not out here in a courtroom. And it's interactive, and we get good feedback, and you get information that we know.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Commission.
Appreciate it. Anyone else? There being none, I'll accept a motion to close the public meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? There being none? Mr. Parkinston, you have questions that was raised. You have answers for questions that were
I don't
raised.
have any questions. Where to start? Where are the CRAs? If I remember right, because again, this body isn't the one that deals with it, it's all council. There's 2 downtown and 1 at the Front Runner Station, I believe. Okay, I'm gonna check my other advisor here. Where are public hearings posted? 1 is on the state website, 1's on the city website, and 1 is here at City Hall. Then the meeting agenda is posted pretty much newspaper, public site, website, and here. You can sign up if you go online to have those emailed to you directly. So you just have to go, I think it's transparency, and then pick what you want, and then when I post it, it says email out, and I usually hit out immediately, so you get notifications of meetings. You probably have to do that with council as well as planning commission.
You're talking about the city's Facebook page,
No, this website.
the city's website, and
RoyCity.org, right?
Yeah.
RoyCity.org.
or royutah.org.
Oh, RoyUtah.org.
You can get text.
What do we call moderate income housing?
I went into that and I didn't see a
It's
posting, but I saw the agenda.
defined by the state. It's usually,
Just a second, he made a comment that I want to respond to.
Looking for it.
The agenda
The agenda is,
on the website is the posting,
oh, okay, that
Okay.
answers my question then. All right,
that's the legal posting,
okay.
okay?
moderate income housing is defined by the state. It's usually 80, 50, and 30% of median income of each city. So every city has to provide housing for those three categories of families. Roy can't pawn it off all on Ogden, West Haven can't pawn it off all on Roy, and vice versa. It has been years, I think 1998 is when the first legislation talked about modern income housing, that everybody had to have something within their general plan that talked about it. Wasn't very specific, but not a lot of people did it, because there was no teeth involved. Over the years, the state has threatened, if you don't do it, we're gonna do something. And finally, last year, the state did it, and there is money involved at this one, that you will not get Class C transportation money. Not Class C, it was TIP money.
Tip.
So all UDOT roads are TIP funded. So if 5600 South wants to be widened and we're not involved, guess what? UDOT goes somewhere else.
Just for the record, the Senate bill was titled the Affordable Housing and Transportation Bill.
Yeah, I've got a copy of it.
Okay? And basically, the affordable housing is what they want us to do, and the transportation part is the threat that they'll take away traffic money.
But what I'm trying to ask is, what do you call affordable housing? What type of building does that require to be affordable housing?
It doesn't specify the type.
It doesn't specify type, it specifies things. And if you'll come to these working meetings, you can work with us and you'll get all the answers. We don't, today we're not doing anything about it, so we don't.
Chair, just by the way, the public hearing is done.
It's over.
Yes, sir.
Development, and this is always a touchy one, view and privacy. The unfortunate part is people have rights to develop their property, and it will take people's views away. Even if this was developed as single-family homes, 3-story tall, it's gonna take people's views away. Privacy-wise, that's always a tricky one, because nowhere in the ordinance does it say you are guaranteed privacy. That's why you're allowed a 6-foot fence and can do landscaping around to help with that. The great thing is, between the tracks where most of this would occur, it is topography-wise a lot lower. So I don't know if 5, 6 stories would start looking down, but when you look at just to the north on 4,000, where that 3.5-story senior apartments are, the height of theirs is at the ground level of the neighbors to the east of them. So topography-wise, we're in better shape than if it was flat. I do know within the Focus Roy and the mixed-use ordinance, they have looked at a buffer that goes along that, Wilson's Orchard and stuff like that, to be more compatible with the single-family versus the mixed-use. So it would be more townhomes, but it'd be smaller in scale than apartments. We can look at that again as we move on. Walking here, working. Okay, and then state and federal money. The city really has only recently gotten any grants. The sad part is, until the feds say they have no more money to give, cities will be getting it. So if Roy doesn't get any of that, everybody else will get it and we won't. It's always an interesting thing. I don't want to be in more debt than that, but I don't know how to solve that fun issue. Yeah, we need to live within our means, really. If the feds don't have it, don't offer it, and if the state doesn't have it, don't offer it. But that's my personal opinion, not Steve Parkinson, the city planner. So, I think I got most everything.
All right. Then we'll move on to legislative.
I know it's closed.
I'm sorry.
I know it's closed. but
Sorry.
I'm not fighting 50 people tonight.
Okay.
Could I ask? why-
At the end of this meeting, I'll give you another opportunity to talk, but we need to move on with the agenda item.
So Steve, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Do we know where we stand as a city in terms of the moderate income housing?
I'd have to go back and look at the report from
That's
last
just a-
year. Housing-wise, single-family, we meet just about all target areas. It's more of availability that we don't. That's always a hard one to say, justify of, well, if I have 300 and none of them are available, how can I provide more? As a city overall, we're doing well, but as time goes on, houses are just gonna get more and more. So the more housing stock you have, really the cheaper it goes. You know, the less housing stock you have, the higher prices go. But single-family wise, because most of everything east of the tracks was built post-World War II. Everything west of it was later. I mean, there's spots here and there that are, you know, kind of mixed into it, but for the most part, most of the older homes are more affordable than most of the newer homes out west. So in essence, to answer your question, we do fairly well. But it's always, again, the state's wanting more and more, and we have room for certain things in certain areas. I think the good thing about the mixed-use ordinance that we've got is it will identify specific areas, so the rest of the city that has been bombarded with requests for rezone, we can just say, nope, it's these two areas and these two areas only until it's all developed and we have, you know, we need something different, something more. Then we could look at, but that's why general plans need to be updated every so often and not 17 years later. You know, every 3 to 5 years, we need to look at that plan and say, are we still on target? Do we still need to make some adjustments? So,
Okay, and then I have two more questions. I know when I first started on the planning commission, we had 97 acres that weren't developed. Do you have an approximation of how much we have?
I don't.
Less than 97.
Less than 97?
I don't. I mean, 'cause I know what, Sunridge took up some, the orchards at 19th took up another, 5, 6 acres. Up by 4,000 in Midland, I can't remember how many acres that was, that's being developed on. So there's a lot, I mean, there's still a lot, but there's less and less.
Right.
Most of it's between the tracks.
Okay. And then my last question is, what we're doing tonight isn't actually changing the zoning
No.
or anything. It's simply putting into policy that these are the areas that we would like to emphasize in terms of creating moderate income
Well, these
housing.
are, again, to comply with the state statutes, we gotta have some of these. Now, we've gone 6 more than were required by law. But again, objective 2 and those 5 there, or 4 of them, A through D, are really the same thing. Look to entities who apply for. If I'm a developer comes in and he's saying, I want this, I can say, well, go apply to HUD and see if you can get some incentive to help build more, but then they will restrict a certain number that have to be moderate income levels. E on objective 2 is basically reduce impact fees. Most of Roy's built out. I mean, a new development doesn't impact it as much as it did 30 years ago when it was all raw land. So reducing those helps, again, affordability of the developer to build stuff, because it's cheaper for him, therefore he can pass the cheaper cost on. That's if, again, there's some restrictions that we can put on that to help. Objective 3, again, is just CRAs. If those don't pass, I mean, we can still have this in that it's just saying, look for future to do those. It doesn't hurt to put these in. Again, these are general plans, look at 30,000 feet, saying, these are great ideas, where can we implement these. And, you know, sometimes it'll be next year, sometimes it might be in 10 years. So, answer all your questions?
You did, thank you.
Anybody else have questions?
Yeah, just for clarification, if I understand correctly, we're kind of have our backs up against the wall as far as transportation goes. If we don't follow some of these regulations, then we're going to be, we might be forced to not receive funding in the future, which we know that our city is definitely in need of
Yeah, and
transportation help.
Yeah, and we're not the only city that's, you know, not to make me look bad, procrastinate. My issue was we were updating our general plan, so my thought was, why do it now, and in 2 months, 3 months, do it again? But when we sat down with Matt Andrews, who's more of an accountant, he looked at it a different way. Says, yeah, in accounting, if you come into compliance, but it might be a month or two late, you're kind of dinged. We're not gonna look at you for certain things, we're not gonna look at you for that. Yes, you're compliant, but it was late. So he says, well, why can't we just do it now and then do it again? These same 10 were within the proposed general plan.
So, you know, if I'm saying, if, you know, 5,600 down in the future has any possibility of not receiving money to widen, that's gonna really harm our
Well,
city with all the building out
They'll just move on if
west.
the city's not prepared and ready.
Right, and then there's, I know there's, you know, potential of Ogden wanting to take the station itself.
Well, yeah, UDOT, or not UDOT, UTA is kind of in charge of the station,
Right.
and they own most of the land around there, so I don't think they're gonna move. That's why we did focus Roy, that's why we're doing the updated general plan, just to show Roy wants and needs things, so.
And then just to clarify that this is a 30,000 foot overview, as we move forward, we will have the opportunity to put into place whether there be some kind of a barrier between a single-family home and a,
Yeah, and again, that's what the mixed-use ordinance, as we're reviewing it, so things that we can look at.
Right.
How,
So-
how do we protect the single-family homes from the multifamily homes? Is it just similar, I mean, kind of the in-between, rather than just single-family and multifamily? Is there something in between that's more compatible? How do you make it more compatible? Height, you know, density, you know, those things we can look at.
and that's where I'd
And again,
encourage the
yeah,
public
this-
to come out to those to
This is
have
not
their
amending
voice.
any zoning ordinance, so no one can go develop tomorrow or next week if, you know, if and when the council approves it. This is just a general plan saying, hey, these are things to look at for the future.
Okay, and then one last question, and if we move forward with recommending this to the council, is this an all or nothing, or are they allowed to say, we don't want policy D, or,
They always have the option to amend what you guys recommend.
okay, just wanted to verify that.
Okay. Are there any other questions from any of the commissioners? If there's not, is there a motion to approve agenda item number 4? Is to consider amending the Roy General Plan, Chapter 6, Residential Development Goal 3, Future Moderate Income, quote, parens, affordable housing needs. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
No?
Nope.
Roll call.
Roll call vote.
Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
Commissioner Brand?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashby?
Aye.
Commissioner Spar?
Aye.
Commissioner Bills?
Bill, oh, I said my name. Aye.
This is on the agenda for next week in the city council.
And it's off of our list.
It's off of your list.
Thank you. I'm sorry, minute of personal privilege. SB 37, which is like about
34.
88 thick. Every third sentence says the planning commission shall, mandates us to do this kind of thing, and which is why we've been working on it and why we divided it up into two parts, basically. One of them is to comply with their mandate to have a report from the council on by the 1st of December, and then we will address this again with what we're actually going to do to change ordinances in the springtime. So, there we are. Thank you. Okay, item number 5 is a a request for site plan and architectural approval for Jamestown Townhomes located at approximately 4913 South, 1750 West. Are the applicants present? I could have bet on it. Come on up. All right, come up to the microphone, state your name and your address, and tell us why you think we should approve this.
The address of the property. You're
Sir?
after?
I'm
The
sorry.
address of
Your
the
address.
property.
Yeah,
My personal
your
address?
personal address.
Okay, my name's Chris Bratch with Husky Real Estate. My personal address is 1602 West, 500 South in Layton.
Okay.
And then just why you should approve this? Was that your other thing, or just something
Yeah.
about the project? Is we're basically proposing,
You get to tell us whatever it is, but you need to convince us that we should approve this, if that's
Okay.
what you want. So tell us why.
I think it matches all the, current zoning where we don't need to change anything.
Okay, that's
It's,
good.
we have, is that correct or incorrect, Steve? Like, I think it matches all the zoning. We just have, we're just proposing to do just a multifamily, fiveplex and a duplex. And it'll be, everything we do is really nice. It'll be kept up. We're actually, there'll be 7 individual units where they can be sold individually. But me and my partner, we plan on keeping them. And they'll be rentals to be, hopefully kept for forever, but we'll be running everything on the HOA and everything like that. And they'll be, all our stuff is nice. Like, it's not gonna be the normal, we're both builders. And it's not gonna be the normal rentals, like it'll all be, done to the nines. And so we get a lot of compliments on that. Yeah, and I just think it's something that'll add value to the city. It's kind of a place where I think someone else would put a lesser product than we're willing to put up there and, and maintain. And I think it'll be a successful, development. It's little, but it'll
You're
be
betting on
successful.
it, aren't you?
Well, yeah, I'm all in, we'll spend a lot of money on it. And so, yeah, and, but I think there's really nothing, the only thing with us that fits outside the thing is, I think I want a couple more parking spots than the, whatever the solid surface area is. I think we're like at 59%, and I think it's supposed to be at 55. And I think that's really the only thing I would see if there's a way for us to change to get a couple extra parking spots. Because I know on some of our other projects, the people could care less about green space. What we fight is parking, and that's the only thing that the neighbors get frustrated with, it's just visitor parking. And that would be my only funky thing, honestly, we're asking for, would be is when we got to there, that we're not trying to do anything. We want it to be a great project, is that's the only thing we ever run into, is just parking, to be honest, and that's why we're after that. It's not to not maintain anything, it's cheaper to put grass in, kind of thing. But I think that's the only funky thing we really have with it. And everything else, we're willing to do whatever it takes to, any little changes, little tweaks we need to do to get it through and get going on it.
Okay.
And so, but yeah, if there's any questions about it, I don't know what's all been shown or shared. It's just a basic, yeah, just a little blurb.
No, about that high stack of papers.
Oh, yeah, well, there you go, then you know a lot about it. And so, I know it was approved before for something different. We came, and when we purchased it, instead of just running with what was approved, we just wanted to spend more money to make it better, and make it where we thought it flowed better and was better. And that's why we just did everything to see, to get going on and do it our way. And so if our way matches up with your way, that'd be awesome.
Stay there for a minute. Mr. Parkinston?
As mentioned, this is a continuation of a request. It was first on the September 10th Planning Commission meeting, and the commission felt because the applicant wasn't there and the elevations weren't here, to table the item until they could send in the elevations. That's why you've got it tonight again, as the elevations have been submitted. Again, this is off of 1750 South. It's kind of a small little parcel, about 0.67 of an acre, or 29,000 square feet. As he did mention, it was approved for 6 townhomes last time. The previous applicant just didn't want to, smush in more. He actually liked more landscaping. For the most part, again, our parking requirements is 2 stalls per unit plus a half stall per visiting parking, visitor parking, maybe I'll talk. It has some issues on the parking, as in the aspects of parkings within the setbacks. Those, you yourself don't even have aspect to amend or to deviate from. So aspect-wise, it would just need to meet the ordinance on locations for parking.
And this proposal meets the ordinance, is that correct?
Well, you've got the DRC comments in the back of your
With the
packet.
DRC, yes, okay.
There are a few items to it. Some of the planning items under architectural are kind of mute now because we do have elevations of it. No walls are longer than 30 feet. Still don't have a color and materials board, but as long as they meet the materials and requirements in the ordinance, you can approve that based on staff looking at it and making sure it meets the ordinance. Rest of it, engineering and building and fire, it's really is not our purview anyway. They would have to meet those requirements to be able to build it, so planning wise, it meets the ordinance as in for site plan, with the exceptions of what's within the DRC comments. Elevation wise, as mentioned, these are kind of some black and white sketches of what the southern elevation and northern elevation of the 5 plexes are. Again, as you look at the site plan, south being, where'd those go? South being this side of the map, so the front of the buildings, as you see it at the top, is what, these will be on the south, and this would be as you enter into the development. So the garages will be along here. For the duplex, garages, you can see in the back. So the garages of the duplexes would be along here, and then the back of the buildings would be here. And as mentioned, the elevations meet the ordinance. There's not a wall longer than 30 feet that doesn't have some sort of vertical break or some sort of aspect of the ordinance requires for both the 5-plex and the duplexes. Again, the only thing in the architectural is just a board and color, materials and color board. But again, that's something that our ordinance specifies of what they have to have and need to have. Colors is really the only thing that's kind of objective, and ours doesn't say it has to be a certain colored hue, so if they wanted pinks and purples, nothing you can do about it.
And we actually brought those tonight.
Okay,
And
if you
so-
have them, it'd be great for them to see.
Yeah. Let me stand real quick.
So staff would recommend approval of site and architecture with the conditions as stated in the staff report.
So one question I had was regarding the lights in the parking lot. I know you had made a comment about if there were going to be light poles. Is there going to be any lighting in the parking lot?
That's exactly what I was gonna ask.
That's, and this will be, there'll be real stone on there. If you wonder why they're heavy. Yes, as we'll make, and I don't know what the Reeves has drawn up, but we'll make sure, there's adequate lighting when you go in, and then just on the rest of it, just for security, with it being on that bigger street. Could you go back to the site plan on that? But,
Here you go, Don.
because I'm sure there's gonna be one at the entrance, and then we wanted to put one, more to the back where it just lit up that whole parking area, so that we just didn't have any security issues with it. Yeah. Yeah, so that's why else we need the light, is just so we can have cameras on the parking lot.
Will you show where that is? I don't understand what you're saying about those lights. That was my exact question. Because there's no lights in your pictures on the drawings, and then it says no lighting in the report. So I'm just concerned because it's
Oh,
so
well-
dark over there.
Yeah, and so we'll put them is there ones on the other thing, because you guys will require one right at the entrance.
Here
Yeah.
and here.
Yeah.
Our ordinance doesn't require lighting. Building code will require lighting,
Yeah.
so there'll be buildings and lights on the outside of the building. The only thing our ordinance talks about on lighting is that you have to have 0-foot candles at property line. So those are things that we look at.
Is that northeast corner, is that just a single-family residential there?
Is that where the parking is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Originally, when the original
There's no
development
carport or
came, that was
anything?
part of the whole thing, and they subdivided the single-family home off. So,
Will there be an issue, Steve, with, it'll be their backyards, you know, like the other people's backyard, but there's no issue of when you put in lighting on your own property, right? Like if it's a pole?
again, you just have to make sure there's no light flooding onto the neighbor's properties.
Mhm.
The parking for the fiveplex, is that in the front or the back of the building?
It's along,
Okay.
Oh, with the garages right there.
there's
Yeah.
garages going in. So it's the north side of the building. So
North
if you look
side.
at the elevations, the north side is on the bottom.
Yep, okay. You good?
Yeah, I'm good. I was just worried there was no lights. It's dark over there.
Well, don't
It
move
is. I'm
Okay.
worried too.
Oh, good.
Okay. Any of the commissioners have any questions of the applicant or Mr. Parkinson?
Park out here, they'll park back here.
There being none? Does your partner want to come and talk to us or not? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay. Okay,
So there's no conditions then, right? Because the lights are covered? Did I understand that?
the conditions,
Under the DRC report.
I know, but like the lights, that's not a condition because it's.
Well, in the DRC, there is a question on lighting. Number 6, the site plan. Says there are no lights within it, but however, if you
Yeah.
are, then these are things you need to do. The height of the pole, the color, we'll need a sample of what it looks like, or a picture and color.
yeah. He's not through tonight. He's got other hoops he's got to jump through.
Oh, now I'm with you. That's what I thought, and then I was confused. Oh, never mind.
All right, well then, the chair would accept a motion regarding item number 5.
I move that we approve the site plan review with the conditions as stated in the staff report.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There being none, this will be on the council, nope, that's
Now we
right,
need an
doesn't have to go back.
architectural-
I move that we approve the architectural review with conditions as stated in the staff report.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There being none? Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, we'll go move on to item number 6, which is a continued discussion of the proposed form-based code. Anybody got anything to say about it tonight?
In the last meeting, we had a presentation from Lance, I believe it
Lance.
was. Didn't know if you had any questions, if you've been able to go through it, I can help you with it. Again, don't hesitate to call me during the week if you do have questions. My office is open all day long,
And you're there most of the time.
most of it.
I thought that guy did a really good job because it made it more real, like where I could understand it more than just trying to see it in the book.
It helps.
I mean, I thought he did a really good presentation.
Okay. I'm sure there will be questions as we proceed, Mr. Parkinson.
Well, the question is, do we feel comfortable to bring it as a public hearing, or are we still discussing?
Okay, now I do have a question. We want to address this item before we get the final report from our consultants?
Final report as in general plan? Or
Yes.
final report as in mixed-use ordinance?
Yes to both.
Well, they're two different documents, so
Okay.
one isn't contingent on the other. So the form-based code is in front of you now, the general plan amendment has not.
Okay,
So if you guys feel comfortable with it, we could schedule a public hearing if you want to discuss it next meeting.
I'll do a
and
mea
then-
culpa. I didn't prepare it well enough to discuss it tonight. Will you put it on the next agenda, and then we'll discuss it? And everybody understands that we will then decide to put it on the public agenda, right?
I mean, we don't have.
And I'm saying that to myself, but,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
It's more of a question of just kind of seeing where we're
Right,
at. Do we
okay.
need more discussion on it? Are we feeling comfortable with it? Or, so, I can put on the next work session
Next work
and
session.
then
Yeah.
bring your questions, concerns, comments, and
Good. Okay. Item number 7 is Commissioner's Minute. Does anyone have anything they want to take a minute to talk about? There being none, we'll move to item number 8, staff update.
I'll just look like Ryan.
Yeah, well, the thinker.
I really don't have anything to update. Unless you have questions on
that's a-
on projects that we've done.
No, so we're kind of caught up right now, I thought.
Is there any plans for that building there by the 56, that got knocked down there on 5600 and the freeway entrance?
UDOT purchased the property, and it's part of their plans, and I'm kind of probably jumping the gun, I don't think they've published it, but from what we've gotten is to have 2 lanes merging, so they needed more space. Which
And you're
is-
talking about the Cache Valley Electric
Yeah.
shed.
To me, I've had a few inquiries of that building to bring it, as a business. The first question I always ask them is, you gotta get UDOT's approval to have access onto that road. UDOT says no, and the building, it just stays there. So for UDOT to buy it, it makes perfect sense for them to be able to go on. So, yeah, that's why it was demoed.
So what happened with the driveway thing since the council didn't vote? Does that come back or is that over? The one where you couldn't park in the driveway?
And that's still on the council's table, or lap, so to speak.
Because they didn't vote, is that why?
It's in the country of
They-
limbo.
They tabled it, so they'll come
Oh.
back as probably as a work session item to discuss it, and then bring it back as an item to vote on.
So we're done with that.
Yes.
Maybe.
And once you guys make recommendation to approve, it's off your,
It's off ours.
off your plate.
Oh, okay.
And the screening part is the same thing.
The
They
what?
tab-
Screening.
They tabled the screening
Yes.
as well.
The
They
what?
They tabled both items. We did the
Fences.
parking and we did
Oh,
screening.
the fences, yeah,
and
that
they
was my
did
other
both of
question.
them. They weren't voting that night.
And that was like where how high it has to be and what has to be that.
What type of fences, what
That's right.
type of landscaping, the
Yep, all
distance of
that.
landscaping, yeah.
But we're all done with that.
We're done.
Unless they specifically says, send this back to the planning commission
To do something.
and give us direction.
Yeah.
I don't
So if they
expect it to
did-
come back.
If they deny those things and then it comes back, then do we look at it again or no? If they deny
It
it, then
depends
it's,
on what they ask us to do.
oh, I got you.
It's not an item I'm gonna bring back
I just wasn't
to
sure.
you.
Okay.
There being anything else? How about a motion to adjourn?
I moved.
Oh, wait, did we fight over a
Beat you
motion
to
to
it.
adjourn? I'm sorry.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned. There you go. I thought about doing that too.
Well, now that everybody's moved.
Yep, we got it covered now.
I was gonna say you look like Austin Powers over there.
I just I had them and I couldn't remember where they were.